Good morning. Continuing this beautiful series of talks from Vimala Thakar from the book Life is to be Related. This is Australia, the 11th of April 1982. So I've already read this a few days ago, but it can't hurt to read it again. So let us proceed this morning very carefully and slowly towards the dimension of silence. When observation becomes a normal state of our consciousness, effortlessly taking place, without any entity becoming the observer, in every movement and at every moment of life, when all the layers of consciousness and their contents are laid open before us, and nothing is concealed from our gaze and perception, then the quality of our behavior throughout the day goes through a radical change. In a meditative way of life, there is no place for wishful thinking or for self-deception. If there is peace within, the outer behavior will be peaceful. If there is a state of egolessness within, the outer behavior, the verbal along with the sensual, does not smell of the isolatory activities of the ego. Our factual contents gets reflected in our daily relationships, which are the mirrors held before us by life. As we conduct the inquiry, as we embark upon the pilgrimage towards our own home, the relationships are the occasions when confirmation of the inner changes can be found. There is no one to tell us that we have changed, but the movement of the whole being in the relationships exposes if the changes have taken place. Here we find the verification. It cannot be that inwardly a person is advanced, but the verbal, psychological, and physical behavior of the person betrays primitivity, egocentric activities. Surely, when there is peace within, the person cannot burst out in violent language. It can't happen, because with every step and every discovery of truth, there is an understanding of the fact. The understanding gets converted into the substance of the being, as the food gets converted into the substance of the physical body. Understanding gets converted into the substance of the psychological structure. So let us remember that changes are reflected in actual behavior. If the behavior does not change spontaneously, there is no qualitative change in our relationships. Then there is no reason to believe or take it for granted that we are proceeding further in our inquiry. If there's an inner order and clarity, the physical behavior cannot be chaotic. Emotional behavior cannot be chaotic. But there will be an orderliness in every movement, at every level. If there is a disorder outside, we cannot claim that inwardly there is orderliness, but outwardly there is disorder. If we have taken the journey together, we have seen for ourselves that in the state of observation there is a reaction-free attentiveness to every moment of life. Observation, attentiveness is there, but the I, the me, the ego, the I consciousness, is neither conscious that it is attentive, nor is it at the center. There is nothing to observe, as the contents of the mind have been observed without resistance, without defending or rejecting any of the things that were noticed. Is it not very difficult for us to observe things and not reject them, not to identify ourselves with them? We cannot accept what we are. In our minds, there are grudges against ourselves. Even after having understood that it is due to the inheritance, there is a constant friction going on within, and we nurse grudges against life. Why should it be so with me? It has not been so with others. Why should I have this inheritance? It be so with me. It has not been so with others. So why should it be so with me? Life is life, and our inheritance is not something that you can scrape away. It is there. If there are shortcomings, or if there are pathological conditionings, we have to accept them for they are as they are. We can do the needful to remedy them with a grudge, with resentment, with anger, with annoyance in the mind, or we can accept them with all this cluttering included. Nothing can help us if we are nursing these grudges within ourselves, and a constant friction goes on, constantly comparing ourselves with others. The moment we accept what we are, the process of becoming comes to an end. Otherwise, we're ever busy trying to become something different from what we are, trying to change. This process of becoming, born of constant comparison, goes on in the mind, comparing ourselves with others, so we can never truly relax within our own being. All the grudges, complaints, and resentments cannot wash away what is. It cannot wash away what is. It is there, and we have to live with it. We can live in constant tension, or we can relax and say that we can't help it, that we have got to live with it, that we are what we are. Inheritance is not like a property or a thing that we can keep aside. It is within us. Through pure observation, we have seen ourselves, and after having gone through observation, if the mind does not suffer from either the identification with or the rejection of what has been seen, then we are free to explore even further. If we get stuck at the level of observation and begin to defend our weaknesses or try to hide them from the eyes of others, then this resistance to the content of our being brings about constant friction of effort. which puts us on the defensive and does not allow us to be free and behave freely among other people. We cannot enjoy life if constantly we are on our guard. First of all, there should be a relaxation to reconcile what is. Acceptance is not identification. If we identify with what is, we become dogmatic and insistent. Accepting leads to resigning to what is without identifying. Acceptance and reconciliation enable us to be pliable, to be free. The contents of our minds have been exposed, and we are aware of the contents, whether we are alone or with people. In every movement of life, there is the conscious movement and the awareness of the subconscious movement. Due to that awareness, it becomes possible for us to sleep without dreams. When the subconscious and the unconscious not remain any more subconscious and unconscious, but they become the whole of consciousness, the tendencies are seen and attended to while we are moving and relating them to ourselves. Then there is no more burden. Today there is fear of the mind, because the subconscious is something we are ignorant about. The fear of our own mind is dispelled in the dimension of observation. There is no burden on the mind. Throughout the day, relationships become a movement of relaxation, not of fear or defense. We become simple, no other complications, nothing to pretend to hide. Just be what we are, and the inward simplicity gets reflected in outward behavior, and this brings about change. Man is born to grow and let the potentialities contained in him blossom and flower out, so that the texture of human relationships changes. Man is not born or doomed to be a prisoner of the body and the mind, of the thought structure. Man is born to understand them, utilize them, and grow beyond them. In the state of observation, there is a movement without the observer and without the observing. No center making the conscious effort to observe. That was necessary while we were learning to observe. Once this is learned to observe, then efforts become irrelevant. Spontaneously, it is happening. As there is nothing to observe, and there is no one at the center making a conscious effort to observe, there is silence. Silence is not abstaining from verbalization only. That is only the surface of silence. Silence is being without our usual center, without making a conscious effort in any direction whatsoever. There is no possibility of experiences in the dimension of silence. When we sit down quietly, The body and speech are quiet, and yet the I consciousness is furiously watching. What is happening to me now that I sit in silence? It wants to watch and interpret in terms of the known and derive some experience out of it. The tension of expectation follows what we call the physical or the verbal and mental quietness. This is not true silence. Quietness is an attribute of the mind. The mind can be quiet without being silent. The body can be quiet. Mind can be, excuse me, I'll read it again. The mind can be quiet without being silent. The body can be quiet, peaceful, in a peaceful posture, without our being in silence. The peacefulness, the quietness should be distinguished from this revolutionary dimension that I call the dimension of silence. This silence is as much the substance of life as the activities of the I are. We move and live through the I and the body. We have a motive. We make an effort to realize that motive. And when the motive is realized, either there's success or failure. If there's success, then a little pride and vanity, along with the feeling of success, becomes the residue in the mind. If there's failure in the eyes of the people and society, then along with the thorn of sadness at failure, there may be some depression that becomes the residue of that action. With every movement, we have a motive, a direction, and an effort for realizing that motive, and we spend energy. This is our life. We don't know a motiveless movement. We know of a movement born of a motive, having a direction, involving efforts, arriving at either success or failure, honor or humiliation, sorrow or joy. And whatever happens to us, we get stuck up there because we can get stuck up in pleasure or pain. This is our practical life. We must begin where we are. In the dimension of silence, if at all we have educated ourselves in the art of observation, and we have grown into that dimension, there is now silence where the I consciousness, the I sense, does not move at all. It has gone into complete abeyance with all its paraphernalia of knowledge, experience, and memory. So there is no movement. When there is no movement of the mind, time comes to a standstill. The mind and the sense of time and space go together because time and space are both creations of the human mind. We have to see this very clearly. Life is infinite, and we have tried to measure infinity, and we arrived at kilometers, miles, and furlongs. We live surrounded by the concepts and symbols. This is conceptual reality. But now the I consciousness, the I sense, the thought structure that does not move at all, its movement is suspended. So the sense of time and direction is gone. Time has come to a standstill. The sense of space has disappeared. Many an inquirer comes up to this, to the frontiers of the known, the frontiers of the eye sense. And now the difficulty of the modern man begins. Along with our beliefs, superstitions, and credulity, we perhaps have lost the capacity to have faith. It was necessary to get free from superstitions, beliefs, and credulity, and we got rid of them with the help of reason. The cultural revolution that came about in the Middle Ages in Europe helped man to set himself free of that. We have created new superstitions from the 19th century onwards, scientific superstitions. There is no capacity to have faith in life, though we have seen life moving in deep sleep. Without us moving a finger, we go to sleep and life revitalizes us. It's a miraculous event. And yet in waking hours, we have no faith that when the I sense, the me, the thought structure, does not move, there will be no danger to us. If the me does not function, people are afraid of what will happen to them. The I sense must know everything. The I, which was created for convenience, becomes so much more important to us. It is much more important than the totality of life. When there is silence, and people come to this point, when the first contact of the emptiness, the timelessness of silence, the spacelessness of time takes place, suddenly the I sense, the me, the ego comes up and shudders with fear. The I was willing to go into abeyance as long as it could watch and translate what was happening in terms of the known. Now the terms of the known are irrelevant. Silence, love, humility cannot be interpreted. It is something through which we go with the wholeness of our being, and then it operates upon us. We don't do a thing to the humility, to the silence, the love. It is not an outcome or a result of the movement of the I. It is an organic part of life with which we come into contact personally, intimately, when the total activity of the mind goes into non-action. I think until here today, and I'll continue tomorrow. Have a really good day.